Hey, GERO how are you? So today is Sunday, May 28th. Wearing my rash guard here. What I'm going to be doing today is we're going to be doing lecture number 4, and we're going to be relating the biology of aging to some of your own body's transitions in physiology. Alrighty, very cool. Um, we see coming up June 5th, it's a critical thinking assignment. I'll be going over that later. I think the best thing we can do is just go right into this week's assignment. So you click right there. All right, and you scroll down, okay, and we're going to start with number 1 here. Okay, this is it, the first one this week. This is Theories of Aging, assignment 4. Very cool. All right, so I know this is not your guys' wheelhouse. You guys are not biologists, but it's really good for you to understand biology. And because things are changing so rapidly and so many new innovations are being coming to fruition where we're targeting aging, okay? And there's some really good science that's going to lead to maybe some really cool medicine, and there's also the other side, the business side of things, where the nutritional supplement company is going gangbusters on this, and so this is where you have to be, a little skeptical, and again, understanding and knowledge is really powerful. All right, so let's get right into this, okay? And I'll explain to you what's going on. So this is a really cool video. Do check this out. And what I've done is I've gone through and I've summarized the video right here and the key concepts. It's really well done. I love the company that makes these videos that kind of relate the biology to average Joe. So the key concepts that come up, and they initially start about to discuss how we have a limited number of cells that are able to divide and replace the old cells in tissue. All right, so this is this basic observation, okay? And we can look across the board at tissue that undergoes cell division. You can look at your skin. You have an older person, it gets really thin, okay, because the rate of cell division is much slower. The cells that line your stomach and your intestines, the gastrointestinal system, again, has a pretty rapid turnover of about every 20 days, and yet it gets a lot slower when you get older. And then the one that comes to mind, just because older people are so vulnerable to infections, is their red blood cell and, more importantly, their white blood cell count. We usually produce about 10 to 100 billion new white blood cells, immune cells, every single day. And it comes from the capacity of bone marrow that goes down as you get older, so you can't produce the new cells. And it's because the stem cells basically undergo an age-related decline in their numbers and function. All right, so the other thing that's the one part, we can't generate new cells. And then we have the problem over here with really old cells. There's a process of pruning all the time. When you see it, for example, when you have an injury, okay, you cut yourself, okay, so all this wound repair goes on, and you get rid of all the damaged tissue, so and the cells that didn't just get hammered, okay, and those undergo a necrosis where they just die off right away. There's other cells that are on the edge, but there is a kind of a lot of sensors inside cells that say, you know what, you didn't get killed right away, but you're not going to be any good for us. So we're gonna set into motion this process called apoptosis, and it's just a biological way of getting rid of the really funky cells. Okay, what happens is when we look at aging, and this is from looking not only humans, animal models, this process of getting rid of these sickly cells that are no good doesn't work so well, and so they hang around. So we have these pre-apoptosis cells that are called senescent cells, and then they exist in your blood, they exist in your intestines, they exist anywhere where there's cell turnover. They're in the way. So it's like having a bunch of crappy workers around, and the new workers can't get in there and do their thing. So that's a big one. All right. Number 3, okay, relate this into something that we can modify, and this has to do with nutrition. You got to think about ancestrally. We can't help ourselves. We never knew where the next meal was coming from, and so when we see food, we eat it, and we eat as much as we can. All right. And so this is what we're driven by ancestors from millions of years ago. So here we are now, super fast forward, okay, to 2023. There's unlimited food all the time, and so we have to have this psychological control. And so the problem is that if you don't, then then your fat cells get more numerous, they get bigger, and then it launches a bunch of problems. Okay, so so there's a growth signal, okay, and this is number 3. Okay, there's a sweet spot in nutrition. Okay, and so there's been, like I said, this explosion of interest, okay, that's happening, okay, in the field of nutrition, because there are sensors that exist in cells. Here's another example of sensors. This is, instead of a sensor saying, hey, you're sick and horrible and we're going to kill you off, there's a sensor that says, hey, there's a bunch of these. If you were in my biology class, I'd be telling you about all these sensors have been identified, and they basically are going back and forth. If there's unlimited food around, then we're just going to keep making brand new cells as quick as we can, because you think about our ancestors, the time's going to come where there's no food around. Okay, then we're going to slow that cell division because there's no building blocks, and we'll fix what other problems we passed on from generation to generation during that fasting period of time. Problem, we don't do that very often. That's what this is all about right here. Okay, and so there's this huge interest because obesity is associated with cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. Okay, and one of the sensors that they talk about in this video right here is it's a chemical, a compound in our cells. It says NAD+. There's another one when you've had a ton of sugar, NAD+ gets converted to NADH. NAD versus NADH, it tips the balance to more NADH, and basically it says cell division, baby, and it just go, 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 go. And let's say you have a bunch of mutations and your cells going, wait, I was trying to repair those problems. Too bad, And so the mutations get passed on from new generation, each cell division. Again, if you fast, okay, then you can get in and do the repair, and that's a big concept, right? All righty? Okay. So that's what this is all about, okay? When we talked about cell division and there being a limit up here in point 1, we see that, again, ultimately our dividing cells stem from stem cells, and these are the cells that can become lots of different types of cells. We have, for example, in our blood, we have the original stem cells. These are the blood stem cells. They're called, for you aficionados, hematopoietic stem cells. They could become a red blood cell, they could become a platelet, they could become one of many different types of non-specific immune system cells, or they could become lymphatic cells, just or B cells and T cells. So they could become any of them, but they start out as a stem cell, and based on signaling, then they go right or left in terms of the course, okay? We lose our stem cells. And like I said right here, here I am, I'm 67. That means compared to you guys, my bone marrow's stem cells, these original cells, I have roughly about 30% of what you guys have, okay? Because my stem cells have exhausted and died off. Anyway, so that's what this is all about. We're going to get back into this article, but first I want to go over to some concepts that I was just discussing about. Okay, now one of the observations that was made is every time a cell divides, there is another little sensor that says, okay, you just had a cell division. You just had cell division. Okay, and at the very tip of the chromosome, so we see here it shows you a chromosome of which we have 23 pairs. At the very tip, there's kind of a measure of cell division. It's called a telomere, okay? And when you're young, you have these very long telomeres, and it really helps protect the DNA from getting mutations. With every cell division, the telomere gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, okay? With each shortening, the ability to produce a new cell is slower, okay? So back to my own situation, okay? I have a reduced number of stem cells, and the ones that I have don't work as well, and that's why I have really thin skin and my immune system kind of sucks and all these processes. Okay. In addition, the cap on the DNA, the telomere, helps to protect it from getting mutations. Okay, so if your telomere shortens, then you're much more likely to have DNA damage, mutations. If you have DNA damage, then when you're reading the recipe to make new proteins that say this is a skin cell and this is what I do for kidney cells, and basically every cell has the same cookbook, which is the 23 pairs of chromosomes. It's just which proteins get made. So it's like going to the cook station and say I want a hamburger versus I want to have a salad. Okay, and so you express the genes, but if they're damaged, you're going to have errors. If you have errors in the genes, okay, so that's so you're reading the recipe and somebody screwed up the recipe you're reading, then what you make is going to be bad. So you're going to have proteins that are not made right, okay? They're less functional. This can lead cells to die. There's a lot of processes that can cells to die: injury, viral infections. That's that whole other process. We can't get rid of our dead cells, all right? So with this shortening of telomeres, my stem cells, okay, like I said, they're getting exhausted. I can't produce as many cells, okay? And then this is a big one right here, okay? So this is something that we have control over, okay? How much cell division are we going to have that is non-functional? If you have too much nutrition, you can sway it into this abnormal cell division, okay? And then that challenges cell-to-cell communication. We're going to learn about this. The biggest one that is it's a hot ticket item because if we think about insulin and diabetes, there's another one called insulin-like growth factor that's also a problem in diabetes, and it leads to problems. Okay, so all this comes together. Okay, in terms of the article, what we're going to do here, and this is a cool, easy article right here that Business Insider. There's probably a paywall where we got these figures from. Down here, this is the future, okay? So maybe we're going to be able to develop therapies that will target these stem cells to rejuvenate them. That's laboratories all around the world are working on that, okay? Another big deal is some of the things we do in life can cause inflammation. You eat the wrong kind of food, it causes your body to have inflammation. This is this whole microbiome thing, and maybe we can generate anti-inflammatory practices that will rejuvenate the stem cells, okay? How can we eliminate our damaged cells? Get rid of those exhausted cells that are in the way, okay? How can we reinvigorate the telomeres? Now, there's a double-edged sword on the telomere, and that is because if you have too active of a telomere, then you're at risk for having really rapid cell division. And one of the most common mutations in cancer is hyperactivation of the enzyme that puts the telomere back on. The longer the telomere, the more rapid growth. So you have to be really careful with this one right here, okay? Awesome. What we can do, though, is we can do things in life. That's what epi means, genetics. So I can reduce my stress, exercise, diet, and I can improve which switches are on and off, okay? So the way it works is you have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 20,000 genes, okay? Every cell has all the same genes. Which ones are turned on and off? It's just like a light switch, okay? And we have the ones that are determination, they determine what kind of cells you're going to be making. So those are always in the on switch. Some are always in the off switch. And then you have the genes that are turned on and off based on your lifestyle, whether you exercise, have stress, or eat right. So these are all different approaches. Okay. Investigations into this. This is the dietary part right here, where there's a lot of when you have fasting or just less nutrition, meaning you have a very moderate diet where you don't overeat, then you can activate these two pathways right here. This is AMPK and sirtuin that causes your body to increase DNA repair. All right, so that's a good thing. Okay. The other thing is, can we inhibit the insulin levels that are produced? Insulin is go time. Insulin says, hey, it's time for cell division. Hey, it's time for insulin-like growth factor to be released. That's when there's a lot of nutrition, a lot of protein will do that too. Your liver releases that. So we can inhibit this or inhibit the next pathway which is mTOR, then we can slow cell division and stop the passage of these potential mutations. Right? So I've given you the full overview. Okay, we can go right in here to this PDF file that's a reading. Again, as always, I encourage you to open up your quiz and go back and forth. Okay, so what we do is we have about 20-25 questions from a pool of questions that you will randomly get 5. You can work together on this if you have a friend. I don't really care. Okay, alrighty. Theories of aging. So I've just given you the basics by looking at that figure. Okay, this is a big unifying organization called the American Federation for Aging Research, or AFAR. So they put together this thing, and they talk about the theory of aging. We're trying to understand, why do we age, how do we age. For all the diseases, obviously the biggest risk factor for cancer and cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease is age. Parkinson, that's age. So if we can better understand the kind of the genetics and the overall endocrinology, which is the hormones that are underlying cell communication, we understand that better, then maybe we can do things so that we have a longer, healthier life. That's the goal of this. Okay, so so you can kind of read through this, and this, as we're going through this, there's this background reading. I'm not going to go over this. So like I said in the other figure, can we modify the course of aging? If we could, then maybe we can modify the course of disease processes. Okay. So one of the few things that has been shown that's something that's under your control is how much you eat. Okay. So a reasonable diet. Obviously, when you're using animal models, you can look at the number of calories that animals get, study them. So studies have been done in mice and in rats, then even in monkeys. We look at humans by just studying their habits, called epidemiology, do survey data, and it all seems to show the same thing, that if you have unlimited calories, you're going to have problems, you're going to have shorter lifespan, disease. If you reduce the number of calories you take in, or calorie restriction, then what happens is there's an extension of the lifespan. We have a big group at School of Gerontology that studies this, all the way from a single-cell organism, yeast, to looking at these worms, which is a great model for aging. Okay, they're called C. elegans. They're found in the earth. They don't live that long. Okay, so they live maybe maybe 8-10 days. But if you can get them to live for 2-3 weeks, hey, you got something going on. And then you go check those genes in mice and see if the same thing happens. Okay, which it does. Okay, and you start getting some genes that can be targeted by what you do in terms of manipulation. Now, right here, insulin and its like growth factor, these two get elevated. So if you have a candy bar, the sugar goes rushing into your bloodstream. What's your body going to do? You can't just let that candy sit in the blood. The candy is supposed to go into your muscle cells so you can use it. It's going to go into fat cells where the sugar gets converted into fats. You store it for later, okay? Because maybe you're not going to have a meal in 2 weeks. And then it goes into the liver, again, where you store it for later in the form of kind of really tightly bound sugar, long chains of sugar that you just clip off as you need them, okay? So more food, more insulin, more IGF-1, okay? But when you have all that floating around all the time because you have food all the time, then you have abnormal cell division. There's too much cell division in tissue that can divide, and that's been a problem in terms of insulin and IGF-1, and it's associated with disease. So we look at somebody, for example, that has diabetes. They have really high insulin and high IGF-1 levels. And you can get, as we'll see later on, if that happens too often, then you become resistant to the insulin, then your insulin levels go sky high. The sugar has nowhere to go because your tissue is resistant to it. You got a problem. Now you're a diabetic with all kinds of disease, okay? Alrighty, so that's what this is all about. Now, if you're not getting rid of the sugar because your insulin is not working because you have lots of IGF-1 around, then you get glycation is another fancy word for glucose, which is another slightly fancier word for sugar, all right? So the sugar has nowhere to go, it's abnormal, it coats proteins, and then your immune system loses it, okay? And so then you start having what's called kind of a global inflammation, okay? And then this can lead to, the glucose attaches to proteins like say it's like honey baked ham. Suddenly all your proteins are honey baked hams. They don't work anymore. The proteins are cross-linked between each other. So this is a protein that would do this. This is a protein that would do that. Then they cross-link. Now nobody's doing anything. Okay, and this is seen over and over and over again in aging, and more important, it's seen with to accelerate when you have abnormally high levels of nutrition. All right. So then this gets into this like, well, maybe there's a reason for aging, okay? And there's a lot to be said about that. You guys are in the prime of your lives; you should be reproducing, okay? And we don't need to have people like me hanging around, okay? So we need to, cull the herd, so to speak. So in the natural world, okay, let's just give it a number. How about 500,000 years ago, okay? I'm not going to live that long because I'm not that fast, okay? And in the wild, something like a jaguar or a lion's going to grab me from behind. It's going to eat me. All right, so then I'm gone. That's natural selection, okay? I'm not going to live that long because my immune system, as I told you, kind of sucks as you get older, okay? So there's this selection, all right? And part of the selection as well is we produce a lot of hormones and get our physiology just up and going. Lots of cell division, lots of other hormones that make us so we can reproduce. But then what happens is what's good to keep you young and keep you vital and get you to the point that you can reproduce can come back later on when you're 40, 50 years of age. You didn't need all that, and it causes a decline in the function of your cells, okay? And so that's what this is, an antagonistic pleiotropy. So what's good when you're young can be really crappy for you when cumulatively when you're old. That's what that's all about right there. So example of this is stress hormones, okay? Elevation of insulin and IGF-1 when you're young to make you big and strong. You don't need all that going on when you're 67 years of age. There's lots of examples of good and bad. Your immune system, okay, has the best intention. The good of it is to get rid of a virus or a bacterial infection, but the bad of it is to be a diabetes, have all those candy-coated proteins, having the immune system say, hey, that looks like something bad, and then have chronic inflammation that causes disease. That's what that's all about, my friends. All right, here's our mitochondria. This is the powerhouse. This is where we generate the credit card for getting things done in cells called ATP, and it comes at a cost. So this is your cell's internal combustion engine. And what's been shown is that as we get older, my let's say I was born in 1956. I got myself a really kick-ass Porsche in 1980, and man, that thing was unbelievable. Now I'm driving that same Porsche now in 2023. It's not doing so well. Same thing happened with your mitochondria. Okay, they turn over, we get rid of them, but the bottom line, they don't work as well, and there are a lot of exhaust. Okay, so their exhausts are called free radicals, and the free radicals cause, which is basically as you're using oxygen, and that's your internal combustion engine, but it comes at expense where the electrons that are generating the energy bleed off, and they cause oxidation. And all you have to do is look at your rusty nails in your backyard, your rusty old car, and that's what happens to your cells. All right? So that's what that's all about. Okay? Alrighty. So as things go bad, okay, DNA repair goes bad. How are we going to improve DNA repair? Fasting. Okay. So your body says, oh wait, there's no food. I better repair what we have. And so it does, it produces these natural antioxidant enzymes, and it increases the number of repair. That's why, not eating too much all the time is a good thing. It gives your body a chance to go back and say, hey, remember those problems before that we were passing along? We're going to go and get rid of them. So that's what that's all about, my friends. Okay. Endocrine, okay, this goes into if you have too much insulin and IGF-1, it's going to be a problem. And it's been associated with accelerated aging in almost every species. The rate of aging, again, is talking about the mitochondria and oxidative damage. So basically, sometimes you have overlapping theories. So I'm done with that, and it's because you'll have 1,000 scientists looking at the same thing from a slightly different direction, and then they call it something else. Okay, so that's what that's all about. So where our goal is, the more we understand about aging. This is normal aging today, and then you have this huge period of disease and decline. Wouldn't it be better? Sure, we're going to live longer. That's what's shown here. But even more importantly is why couldn't we have just a little bit more optimal performance in terms of our bodies, so we wouldn't have this huge period of they call it morbidity or sickness, and it's really, it's we'll keep you alive in spite of all your diseases in our modern culture. So that's the goal of understanding all this stuff. Okay, you did your quiz. Okay. This is an example of, remember we were talking up here about the limitation that happens in terms of cell division, and the clearest example happens in terms of our fertility. So we talked a lot about fertility. We just grabbed these two articles to look at what's going on, okay? So when we're looking at fertility, okay, what's that's associated? We could look across the board, study different humans, okay? And we see that the longer the telomere, okay, so you haven't, because what happens is as you're making new sperm cells from the stem cells in your testes, every time that happens, the stem cell telomere goes dink, 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 okay? The longer the telomere, okay, the better the DNA in the sperm, the better the sperm count, they're more active, you're more fertile. Bada bing, okay? We see down here, nice long telomeres, these caps on the end, and we have lots of sperm, really active sperm, good DNA, all right? The opposite is true right here, okay? So we have a short telomere, you're not protecting the chromosome anymore. You see the damage right here, it's all fragmented, and you have, this guy was one here, and this one got split in two. Lower numbers of production because of stem cell failure, and the ones you produce don't work that well, okay? That's what that's all about for men. In women, okay, we see long telomeres, okay, are associated with longer lifespan, more births, more successful reproduction, okay, higher levels of estrogen, okay, that's going to delay your menopause, okay, improvements of this protective protein in your DNA, okay. There's controversy about this one, but one thing that is seen, however, if you, like I said, a long telomere can be associated, it's better cell division. So in women's ovaries, you do see if there's too long a telomere, a higher risk for cancer of the ovaries, okay? Let's see, you have short telomeres, okay? Early menopause, okay? Lots of miscarriages, so it affects your fertility dramatically. Your ovaries don't produce as many cells, okay? Because cell division is based on telomere length, okay? And so these are all things to consider. All right, cool. So then what we do is we go down here, and so this is for the discussion right here, okay? So that explains everything, and we kind of want you to go in here to this website and understand fertility. It's important. You guys, like we said earlier when we look up here, you guys should, by your age, have 3 kids already. Maybe by the time you're 30, we're designed to have 5 or 6. It is what it is, okay? And waiting to your mid-30s, well, then what happens is the ship is sailed, and the ship is sailed both for your ovaries and for your sperm, and so for your eggs and for your sperm, all right? So what we want you to do is study this right here. There's an explanation of what some of the strategies, okay, for finding out how well your eggs are doing, okay, when it's time to have a kid. And then these are different approaches that are for infertility. So I'll show you, I'm going to jump through this website, the approaches for understanding your reproductive potential as a woman, and then different approaches. So one of them is to give you clomiphene so that you're able to tell, your brain tells your ovaries to start just pumping out the eggs. Usually, once one egg matures, you produce enough estrogen and a couple other hormones that shuts off the brain, shuts this off, and you only produce one egg. However, if I'm a fertility doctor, I can give you clomiphene. It basically keeps the brain from seeing the estrogen, and you just keep pumping out the hormones, so you become a super ovulator, where in a single cycle, instead of producing one egg, you might produce 15. Okay, that's how that works. All right, awesome. I'll go through that in a sec. Okay, there's other fertility meds. We can inject you with this hormone that we see right here. Okay. I can inject you with FSH, okay, and do the same thing, cause you to become a super ovulator, okay, lots of eggs. Sometimes that's not going to work, okay. So maybe you're going to do in vitro fertilization, and this is a really big kind of moral and ethical thing for people. Do you want to store your eggs? Do you want to freeze them? Do you want to store? Do you want to fertilize your eggs? Do you want to store and freeze those? Okay. Do you want to basically go see a fertility doc and have them go in and harvest a group of your eggs after we make you a super ovulator? Go in there and surgically they can harvest the eggs, okay, and then grow them in a petri dish, okay, and give them a little kickstart, and then implant those tiny little 8-16 cell stage cells embryos back into your uterus, okay? Because a lot of women, when you're older, because your estrogen levels are lowered, then there's a huge problem getting the early fertilized egg cell, so the single sperm, the single egg cell, to implant into the uterus. Okay, there's a lot of problems. So this is one way of bypassing that and increases success. That's what that's all about right there. The other thing to think about again, we talked about men. Yes, your fertility goes down, and guess what? We saw over here as we're marching from 20s to 40s. Guess what happens? The quality of your sperm goes down. So we just did a study where we controlled female age, okay, at a young level, and looked at male age. So there's lots and lots of big studies, and it's shown that a lot of issues like autism, ADHD, psychotic behaviors, bipolar disorders, substance abuse, on and on and on, increase with the age of your sperm. So yes, we both have a part in this. All right, so quickly, and so again at the end of the discussion, to discuss your emotions about your reproductive future, and some of these things, these thoughts that you actually have to start planning based on your biology that you've learned in this lecture. Okay, so we can go right in here, and I'm going to quickly show you how to navigate this, guys. Okay, so yeah, they're gone for the. It's just actually a really cool website put together by a private company. I love the source. So we're looking at reproductive aging right here, looking at women, your egg quality, and you went to college, you went to grad school, and got your job, and you say, okay, I'm ready to start having babies. But see the precipitous drop that you're seeing in your ability to have babies, and that's what we're looking right here. This is the rate of women per 1,000 that had successful pregnancies. So we see age is a big factor, okay, because of everything we talked about in terms of cell division capacity, okay. So you get to look at determine the woman's fertility potential, okay. The more high quality eggs, the more estrogen you're producing, the more, this is another hormone called anti-Müllerian hormone, the more these hormones are produced, so that it will shut off your body's production of FSH. Okay, so we see over here, just to show you right here, it's just a natural feedback that says, okay, that's enough, right? So the more estrogen and more anti-Müllerian hormone, there's another one they called inhibin in there. All these three hormones go back here and will shut this out. So also the lower FSH, the higher quality of your eggs. Okay, so that's something else that you're going to be looking at. So, all right, so we'll measure your fertility potential with that. And then the other thing we measure your fertility potential with is, okay, looking at your FSH levels. All right, so if you don't have good ovarian follicles, okay, and that's this collection of cells where the egg is in the middle, the cells are producing these hormones that are basically regulating your cycle, but also set you up for pregnancy. And if you don't have really good ones, then what happens is your brain is like, well, where's the estrogen to shut me up? There isn't. I'm going to make more FSH. So the higher the FSH levels, the lower your ability is to give birth, because it reflects that your ovaries are not working well. All right, so high FSH levels are not a good thing. And we can see over here the delivery rate in women. We see the older women are way down here, okay? And we can do this by age, and this is the youngest women up here that were in this study. But if your FSH levels are higher and higher, there's something wrong with your ovaries. Okay, that's what that's all about. So, and you can look more into this right here if you want to learn more about FSH, and we can also right here. The doctor will also look at that other hormone that is produced by your ovarian follicles. If it's high, you're good to go. If it's low, there's something wrong. And then another way to do it is we can do this clomiphene challenge test, okay? And how sensitive is your reproductive system to doing this, okay? We're going to give you clomiphene, okay? Your brain's going to say there's no estrogen because I'm blocking this signal from your ovary to your brain, so it should pump out the FSH, and you should then have a ton of follicles, a ton of eggs go through maturation, okay? If you don't, then you got a problem, okay? So you can measure the number of eggs using an ultrasound, okay? And we can also measure how much FSH is being produced, okay? All right, guys, so that's the story. Check these things out right here. I want you to have fun with this. Peace. I'm still here down in Costa Rica. It's all good, though. And I'll be producing the next lecture here probably in just a couple minutes.